So please join us on all of our social media platforms, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have a question today, please leave that in the chat, and our presenters will be happy to ask those, answer those questions for you. We will send that email out at the end, so just go ahead and look for that post-session email with all of our information and all of the links. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our wonderful speakers for today. So we have Lourdes Rodriguez, who manages the university's flagship childcare choice and sick and backup childcare programs. She holds an MS in early childhood education. She spent more than 30 years in the field as a dance teacher, camp program coordinator, preschool director, and external quality assessor for youth programs. She is a member of the College and University Work Family Association and the National Association for the Education of Young Children. We also have with us Eileen Lawless, who provides support and resources to caregivers of adults age 18 to end of life. She holds a master's degree in social work from Hunter College and has over 20 years of experience working in hospice, skilled nursing, and assisted living communities, specializing in program development, support in memory and behavioral care, and training and quality care for personal and professional caregivers. She's proud to work along with Lourdes at the Life and Work Connections, which is a wonderful team, and they work to improve work-life integration for everyone in the University of Arizona community. And so I'm going to let you all take it away and hope your PowerPoint works better than mine does today.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction and for allowing. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint now. Just confirm, can you see it?
Yes, we can. Thank
Perfect.
you.
So thank you for the introduction. As you just said, I'm Lourdes Rodriguez. And after everything that you said about me, now I have the opportunity to support parents in the university and other people like the ones that are joining us today, and have the opportunity to provide help and support for their caregiving needs from birth to the end of life with my partner in crime, Eileen.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. And as Lourdes was saying, at Life and Work Connections, we try to provide that life and work balance or integration. So what I do is I focus on the other generational spectrum of caregiving, which is adults 18 and older to elder care, right to end of life. So we try to focus on those caregiving issues together.
If you are a parent or a caregiver, you probably understand the true meaning of a busy schedule. It is a constant juggling between be there for your loved ones and at the same time maintain a successful career. No need to say that this pandemic has exacerbated the balance of this already challenging reality, regardless of how we manage these roles. During the role, of course, we will have moments in which we will think that we failed and we begin feeling guilty. Today, we want to help you turn this guilt, usually perceived as a negative feeling, into a positive one. We will share the top reasons listed by parents and caregivers for feeling guilt. And we will explain how to manage this guilt to be able to turn it into a positive feeling. Before we start, let's have a little exercise of like a little reflection. First, let's start by self-assessing our own emotions. When you think about everything your family and work balancing act means, have you ever feel overwhelmed with remorse? Remember, we don't want your answer. This is for yourself. Just think about it. Have you ever been overwhelmed with remorse? This is a normal feeling, and it's completely normal to feel remorse sometimes. However, have this remorse take control over your mood or over your emotional well-being? Think about it. It's just that you feel it sometimes, or it's really taking a toll in your emotional well-being? I invite you to be honest with yourself. How frequently or how bad is this feeling? Hopefully you already have some kind of idea of where you are standing, and let's help you a little bit.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of caregiving. And this is basically before COVID. And I think what I want everybody to do is just take a few deep breaths as we go along. So right now, there are 53 million family caregivers that are providing unpaid care to an adult or a child with special needs. And that's been basically within the past 12 months, okay? So right now, adult caregivers is at the number of 47.9 million. That means that 6 in 10 family caregivers are employed as well. Not that means, but that's basically a different entity. So we have a lot of caregivers who are providing care to their loved ones, working, and in a lot of situations also balancing families, which we sometimes term as the sandwich generation. 64% of working parents caring for a special needs child believe that the caregiving responsibility has negatively impacted their work performance, that balance. 23% of family caregivers caring for a loved one for about 5 years or more report that their health is fair or poor. And then 1 in 4 caregivers are millennials, and half of them are African American, Asian American, or Hispanic. So again, during COVID, we have the extra layer of caregiving, being under the same roof and caring for other individuals who perhaps we didn't care for before, or things shifted. Family caregivers reported more negative effects from the pandemic than non-caregivers. During the pandemic, providing care has been proved to be more emotionally, physically, and financially difficult. Only 53% of employed caregivers said that their supervisor was aware of their caregiving responsibility. 61% of caregivers with paying jobs say that helping their loved ones has impacted their employment situation.
And if we go to the other side of the spectrum regarding parents, let's think about before COVID. It's a reality. Today, parents care for their children in way more responsibles than we used to. I don't recall ever being on a car seat or using the seatbelt when I was a child. Never, not to think about, I never wear a helmet or any kind of protection when I was cycling. So parents today really care about their kids and their safety. Another issue is that there's no manuals or pamphlets or instructions for children. And no matter how much you read or you prepare, you will never be completely ready for parenthood. Surprises and unexpected situations will occur. We are social beings. Humans are social beings designed to raise children in groups, and modern society does not support this because we live in a model of more isolated and nuclear families. Extended families usually live far away, and to complicate this system, we are now still on a pandemic. Parents live, two parents are merging two different baggages. There's different backgrounds, different raising, different emotional aspects, and conflicts with parenting styles or belief, it's normal. So we need to learn to compromise. Just to share a funny example, my parents are from Cuba. So when they became American citizens, it was kind of a big deal to have their passport and all their documents ready, because you never know when you have to run. And I was an American citizen since birth, but I still follow the same, keeping my passport ready because you never know when you have to run. It's silly, but that's what I learned. And my husband just deal with it. On the other side, my husband was able to be with his grandparents all his life, and he kind of took it for granted, when for me was such a big deal when I had the opportunity. So guess what? He learned to not take it for granted parents. So again, it's two baggages, and it's not about which one is right or wrong. So difficulties and conflicts, it's normal. It's part of the deal. Now, when we talk about parenting during COVID, the challenges that the pandemic create, like for example, faculty members, to give an example, have been highlighted in different articles and forums in multiple universities. Harvard University even nicknamed the situation as calling it or titling Babar in the room. And a recent survey from Care at Work, which is a backup childcare program, said that this situation, the people that answered the survey share that they are concerned about productivity, about performance, and moreover, about the yearly evaluations, and they feel that their productivity have been affected. 65% of the respondents to this survey say that their productivity at work has suffered while they are trying to manage both work and childcare duties. 55, oh, sorry. 50, oh my goodness, now I'm the one playing with everything. Done. Here we are. 55% say that they feel like they are letting down their colleagues because they are busy doing other things. About 65% of the parents admit that they either start later or keep working until later. 64% say that since last March, when we start all this craziness, they have at least remember one major failure at work. And about 45% of working parents also say that juggling childcare responsibility have affected their career advancement to suffer. Another consequence of this pandemic is how the gender gap in work hours grew due to caregiving demands, and it's even jeopardizing the women's chances of staying in the labor force. Women are leaving their jobs in very high numbers. Last but not least, parents perceive that they became their kids' teacher. And even though that everybody feels different about this new role, the reality is that it's a role that is not defined, and even the expectations are unknown.
So the one thing that Lourdes and I always tell those that we work with, because the biggest thing is a lot of people feel that their journey with caregiving is their own. It's very unique. And in a lot of ways it is, but there's one thing. We want you to know that you're not alone. We're here to support you as a University of Arizona employee, but the caregiving experience is something that can be shared. That's something that if you reach out, help is always there and support is always there. So we want you to keep calm, because in the world of caregiving, no matter what age, you're not the only one. The other thing is, if we can just think about and reflect, and this might be something for you to think about on your own as I talk about this, but there can be lots of reasons why we feel parental or caregiver guilt. And I'm just going to throw out a couple of examples. A lot of times caregivers feel that they're not there enough, that they're not mentally there enough, whether it be at work or with their loved one. And it's often said that caregiving can, that guilt can be our constant companion. So it's always kind of there. We leave the house or we leave our loved one and we start to feel bad, Sometimes we feel that if we're focused on, say, the person that we love, perhaps we're ignoring our children, and we feel bad about that. We can't give equal attention. It's very difficult to do. Sometimes the thing about caregiving and the emotions that come with it, there can be other emotions as well. And I'll give you an example. If we have a person that we're caring for, say with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia, and they keep asking the same question over and over again, perhaps we can start feeling things like impatience or anger. And sometimes we can lose our patience with that and say, Mom, I answered this question 3 times already. Those are the feelings of guilt that kind of rise. Sometimes we feel like we're not listening enough, or we're not doing the job that we truly want to do. So just some things to reflect on. We often say, I rarely, Ann Smith basically said, I rarely meet a parent who denies having guilt about how they have raised their children. And I think we all feel that way as parents, reflecting, did I really do the best I could? And then with caregivers, and this is an important thing because oftentimes we feel like we have to do this on our own, or we're a little apprehensive to ask for help. Caregivers are often so busy caring for their loved one that they tend to neglect their own well-being, which is a very important part of being a good caregiver.
You cannot give what you don't have, right? So if you don't care for yourself, who's going to do it?
Exactly.
So we devote time to research and professional development to learn and stay updated in our job, regardless what kind of job we do. But do we also look for learning opportunities to support and improve our parenting or caregiving skills? Think about it. Why not? Probably because we feel guilty setting aside time to do so. For example, Eileen and I provide regularly different webinars and workshops, and we notice a very high registration, but the attendance is usually around 50% on average. So this means that, yes, there is interest in learning, but something is keeping half of the enrolled participants from attending, and we wonder why. So it's not that the topic is not relevant, it's why are they not attending? Eileen and I work in a higher education environment, and probably many of you as well, where learning and research is embedded in our daily routines. It's part of the deal. But I'm going to ask, have you seen any parenting or caregiving courses or classes available? If you did, please let me know, because I need to enroll in them. If so, once again, even if they are provided, do you think you will give yourself permission to attend? I wonder if you will be brave enough to ask your supervisor time to attend that needed class.
David Kessler is a psychotherapist who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross when talking about the various stages of grief and loss. And after his own personal loss, he talked about, he added a sixth component to that, where he basically said, what we need to do is process these emotions. So for example, if we're feeling guilt, we need to process why that guilt is happening, and then see what kind of practical steps we can take to work through that, to take action based on that emotion. So we talk about taking these emotions and putting them into motion. So we talk about guilt, anger, frustration, grief, and loss. I mean, these are all emotions that we can experience, but we can put them into a positive direction. So oftentimes when we think about guilt, there's this relationship between guilt and shame. And I just want to talk about shame a little bit. It is a very powerful master emotion. And it's often this really big fear that we're not good enough. And that's from Dr. Brené Brown, excuse me. Shame is also a feeling of worthlessness and a negative sense of self. So we're not off to a good start emotionally. It is not about making mistakes. It is about being the mistake. And this could be a source of destructive and hurtful behavior. And then we'll talk about guilt a little bit. So guilt can either hold you back from growing, or it can show you what you need to shift in your life, to take that action, to put that emotion into motion. People often feel guilt when their actions or thoughts don't match their standards of themselves. Hang on for just a second. It is a moral emotion that helps us regulate our interactions with others. It's not a reality. It's not a life sentence. And it often motivates us to make amends and take that direction with these emotions.
In other words, as Dr. Brown nicely summarizes, shame implies I am bad, I'm a mistake, while guilt is more about I did something bad or I made a mistake. So there's a line that divides these two terms. This is the same mindset approach that I suggest to parents when they are dealing, for example, with their children's behavior. When you are correcting a child, describe the behavior and do not label the child. So for example, say, hey, buddy, don't say lies, instead of don't be a liar. So you address the event or the action, not the person. Like everything in life, we need to be open to change and open to continue learning. We have to flex and adapt. And you can do it. You just have been doing that for a year. So never assume and keep trying to do your best. Keep in mind, no two kids or even adults are the same or need the same. If you have more than one child, probably you already know that whatever works for one, it's completely useless for the other one. Or on the same happened with elders. We do not age the same way. We age in different ways, and the needs for each one will be completely different. I always share with Eileen that my mom, her mind is extremely sharp, but her physical mobility is not as good. On the other side, my mother-in-law, I call her in a very nice way, the Energizer Rabbit, because she's full of energy and mobility, but her mind is lately playing some tricks. And now I want to ask you, are you stuck feeling bad about your well-intentioned mistakes? Or are you learning from them? Because there's learning in everything, in good or bad. Are you frequently evaluating your performance as a parent or as a caregiver? Very often we always remember the bad things or the things that we did wrong and constantly forget about everything that we are doing right every day. So remember, practice self-compassion. Do not aim for perfection. I mean, it is not healthy during ordinary times, much less these days. Unexpected is the new normal, so do not aim for perfection.
So just a couple of quotes to reflect on. Nancy Kreisman wrote an absolutely beautiful book on caregiving, and she says, my caregiver mantra is to remember, the only control you have is over the changes you choose to make. And then the other thing is just a reflection. Sometimes we're all so hard on ourselves. We need to sit back and marvel at our lives. So we push away those negatives, we pull in the positive. We look at the grief that has softened us. We look at the heartache that has wizened us and the suffering that has strengthened us. And despite everything, we still grow, and we need to be proud of that. So I want to talk a little bit about, oftentimes with caregiving, caregivers often have an issue as far as having a conversation with their loved one, the state of caregiving, what's happening, what will happen in the future, how to plan for things. So the first thing I want you to think about when you're thinking about that balance, first of all, have the conversation with yourself. Because oftentimes we do have to reflect on that. We've got that perfectionist thing going on. We've got those high standards of what we want to accomplish. But how can we do that with work, with a focus on our family and the focus on those that we love and that we're caring for? And then have that conversation with your partner, your spouse, or your family members, making sure that you're communicating what is exactly going on and maybe some of the help that you're going to need within the entity of your family. Then, as I mentioned before, having that conversation with the adult that you're caring for, the older individual that you're caring for, or your children, how you are doing, what you're doing, and how you can work together. And this is an important thing. Also making sure when we're looking at that life and work balance, that we're having the conversation with your boss or your colleagues. We don't necessarily have to go into too much detail or, go into everything, but just letting them know that you're in a caregiving situation and having that discussion about how you can balance things out.
So to summarize, let's give you 5 tips that you can start right away using to handle your parental or caregiving guilt. Number one, remember, this is normal. Everybody can feel guilt at one time, and because after all, we all want the best for our loved ones. Once again, do not aim for perfection. Remember, we are just human. No, we are not superheroes. Devote your energy to learn from your mistake. As Eileen suggested earlier, turn emotions into motion. Whatever we do is out of love. So even if we fail, it's not because we intended to harm anyone. As you probably already experienced, becoming parents, I always joke that it turns you into public property because everybody feels entitled to share their opinion. Not everything works for everyone, so just be sure that you look for reliable, evidence-informed advice. Do not believe everything that you hear or read. And finally, don't do it alone. Do not feel ashamed of asking for help. Remember what we shared at the beginning of this presentation. We are designed to live in small cooperative groups, not in nuclear families. And it's very important that we build a support network.
So oftentimes when we talk about caregiving, we know that it can be stressful. And if the stress continues, then what happens is we start to experience burnout. And burnout is that loss of energy, that inability to perform as a caregiver as well as you would like to, and those emotions that accompany that as well. So we're just going to talk about some ways to avoid caregiver burnout. So the first thing is, we talked about having that conversation with yourself, setting reasonable goals, not only with you, but with your loved one, and perhaps those who you have reached out to help you with caregiving. And then know your limits. You know, some of us have certain relationships with our loved ones where we have to set boundaries and we can only do so much. So then perhaps we can access services in the community, or we can look at different resources that are available to help support us. We also want to understand what you're dealing with. Lourdes talked about that before a little bit. Sometimes it's difficult to get that information about the diagnosis that you're working with or what to expect in the future. So we can help you kind of not be overwhelmed by that information and see if we can have you or assist you in taking those steps to get that. And then learn to accept your feelings. Once again, you are not alone. There are other individuals out there who experience this excessive guilt or these feelings of grief, sadness, loss. Then we want you to reach out and trust someone. We see asking for help. We see asking for information as a sign of strength to be that caregiver that you can truly be. So it's not always easy, but when we extend and we tell people what's going on, we can get the help that we need and be that fantastic caregiver that we want to be. Shakespeare once said, "Get thee to a support group," not a nunnery, a support group. So essentially, we want you to make sure that you have an opportunity to talk to others, because you're going to find that individuals who are doing caregiving are often in the same boat, relating to those emotional things, those physical things, those financial things that you can share information with and get support. And the other thing is stay healthy and positive. Just making sure self-care has been more of a challenge with COVID. Taking those 5 minutes to go out and get some sunshine and to walk or to meditate or to exercise. And I know that that's a challenge, but it's still attainable. And somebody just asked that question, is how do you access a support group? We can help you with that and get you those community supports for you. And the other thing is be realistic, okay? Every aspect of caregiving, the physical, the financial, the emotional, how can you provide those types of care and get the help that you need at the same time? Who else can help you with these things, and what can they do?
So, Anne-Marie, I don't think we have time to answer questions. Will it be okay to reply to the people that wrote the questions to their email so we can provide an honest and full answer? Will that be okay?
Absolutely. And I know that someone had asked that if your services were only available to employees. We have quite a few listeners who log in that are not U of A employees or community members. And so what we will do in the follow-up email is to provide other resources within the community that people can access. So we'll make sure and provide all of that. So I want to thank you both so much. This is a really important topic. We have so many families that are struggling, not just because of COVID, but because, you know, they're doing multiple jobs. They're trying to work, trying to take care of their parents, and trying to take care of kids at the same time. And now that they're all at home, it's just been, you know, really a struggle. So thank you so much. And thank you both for everything you do for all of our faculty and staff and the support you provide. It's a wonderful resource that the university has for all of us. And so we will make sure and get information out to our listeners about everything that's available at the university, but also those that are available within the community. Thank you both so much.
Have a great day.
All righty, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen really quick, though. Again, thank you to our presenters. And next week, we've got a special one. We normally do every 2 weeks, but we've got a special presentation next week. It's going to be a 1-hour session, so make sure you allow your time for that. We've got Spencer Gorin, who is going to be talking about navigating relationships, essential foundations for the art of empathy and courageous conversations. So this is sort of building on what both Lourdes and Eileen talked about, and really continuing that conversation about how do you work within those relationships that you're dealing with now. So he's going to be talking about learning 3 central concepts to navigate all relationships from the simple to the complex. So make sure to join that one. We'll send the registration link in your follow-up email. Don't forget, this Saturday is our last weekend of Connect to STEM. Grab those kids, grab the family members, log in and watch. We've got some wonderful sessions. We're going to be doing sticky ice. We're going to do, see from our, Lucas from the Aztec Center is going to do another virtual reality session. And we get to tour Chloe, the giant colon from the Cancer Center. So please log in for that. And of course, from all of us here at the University of Arizona, we want to thank you for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you. And as always, we always say, bear down, mask up, and if you can, vax up. See you next week.